Cool, let's get started. My name is Niklas Kunkel, and I'm the founder of Chronicle Protocol. And what I want to talk to you about today is, are RWAs kind of the answer to the DeFi boom-bust cycle? Now, what is the DeFi boom-bust cycle? It is this thesis that DeFi is mostly based off of creative ways of creating leverage, right? And that leverage is really only a attractive, property, right? It has like really good kind of product market fit when number goes up. So in a bull market, DeFi is kind of this really like amazing flywheel that can generate a lot of revenue. Because people just want to get more and more and more leverage and are willing to kind of pay exorbitant borrow rates to achieve it. And then when number stops going up and you're in a bear market, kind of the opposite happens, right? Nobody wants leverage because prices aren't going up. And so the borrow rates kind of collapse. And so DeFi protocols really have this problem of like, they make a ton of money, right, during the bull times, and then they make almost no money during the bear market, right? And so they have this really undesirable property of just like scaling up and scaling down as a business, right? Like having to hire a bunch of people and then fire a bunch of people. So there's a real need to kind of diversify revenue into like uncorrelated mechanisms. And so RWAs are one way of doing this, right? Of diversifying revenue out of crypto correlated yields. So quick shout out about Chronicle. Who are we? What do we do? Chronicle is essentially the first oracle on Ethereum ever. Me and Mariano Conti made it in, I think it was June or May of 2017. And we made it for MakerDAO because they needed one for DAI and no oracles existed. But it was kind of like an internal only like oracle for many, many years. And then around like 2 years, we spun out and productized it and externalized it. And today, we're the second largest oracle after Chainlink with just over $11 billion of TVL. Okay, so I want to leave you today with a few points. If you walk away here today knowing this, then I'll be very happy. So the first is that RWAs are kind of the catalyst to scaling DeFi. What do I mean by that? DeFi doesn't just have a revenue diversification problem, it also has a growth problem. The problem is that the growth is limited to what is the collective market cap of the major liquid crypto tokens, right? Bitcoin, ETH, that Lido staked ETH, that tends to be the main types of collateral in DeFi, and if those don't grow, DeFi can't really grow. So there is trillions and trillions, actually tens of trillions of dollars of assets in traditional finance that if we can tokenize them into RWAs and use them as collateral in DeFi, right, it's going to let us scale 10, 100, 1,000x. So number two, integrating RWAs into DeFi protocols poses many challenges. RWAs are not crypto native assets. You can't just go and see all the information there is to know about, like you could do with a token, right? With RWAs, right there, the actual asset is stuck at some custodian off-chain, and there's some properties and metadata and terms and maturities and yields and counterparty risk, right? That is extremely difficult to translate into an on-chain environment to make a RWA kind of behave in a crypto native kind of manner or behavior. And that is kind of what makes them really risky and difficult to integrate in a correct way. And so you see people integrate them today, but I would argue that very, very few people are doing it in a safe way. Point number three is oracles are actually the solution to the above problem, right? Oracles are going to really play this major role of bringing on-chain all of this metadata attached to an RWA asset that lets DeFi protocols, right, handle them in a DeFi native and smart way. And furthermore, looking down the road, really oracles are going to kind of circumvent this role that, when I say the word oracle, you probably think of like the price of something. That's going to go away, right? The role of oracles is really going to change into being this interoperability layer between traditional finance and decentralized finance, or, stated differently, between the off-chain and the on-chain. So I want to talk to you a little bit about Maker, right? Quick TLDR for those of you who don't know. Maker is one of the largest DeFi protocols, and essentially you lock up some kind of valuable collateral, like say ETH, and then you can borrow stablecoins against it, right? So it's just like a bank, essentially. And now I can call it a bank because I don't work there anymore. So Maker actually makes a shit ton of money. So here is the revenue just from crypto loans, right? So this is using ETH as collateral, using Lido staked ETH, using wrap BTC, seeding different lending markets like Spark or Morpho with DAI liquidity. You can see at the bottom, Maker is making around $172 million a year. That's a lot of money. And now let's take a look at the RWA revenue that Maker is making. Right, the naming scheme is going to look a little bit confusing because it's all kind of different SPVs and different vehicles. But Maker is making around $126 million annually from RWAs at the moment, right? Most of that is predominantly treasury bills. And so you get this really nice, so here's like a timeline of like the distribution of where Maker gets its revenue from. And so going back to 2020, you see that it's like all, right, this like blue-purple kind of area. This is all like crypto-backed loans, right? So loans against ETH, against BTC, right? Kind of what I would consider, right, this DeFi boom-bust kind of category. But you can see that starting in kind of, late 2022, early 2023, right? What's in yellow, public credit, right? Maker really diversified its revenue. So it's now, right, it's not quite 50-50, but it's getting there. So this is like a really, really healthy distribution, and this is like what you want to see. So, right, we touched on this earlier, but RWAs are not crypto native, right? They are not, when you liquidate an ETH on chain, right, anyone can just go and bid on that ETH and claim it, right, and make the protocol whole that gave out the loan. With RWAs, this is not the case. They're heavily, heavily regulated. You have to be KYC'd and a certain type of institution, and in some cases have a certain kind of license to even hold them, to bid on them in some kind of like distressed debt auction. And this makes them really, really tricky for DeFi protocols to handle, right? And so I would quickly want to touch on just a couple elements. Honestly, we could sit here talking for hours about all the different things that you need to pay attention to. But I think one of the main things, and probably one of the most intuitive ones, is custody, right? So when you have an RWA token on-chain, like let's say a treasury bill token, that token is not a bearer asset, right? Like if I just send you that token, like do you now own that treasury bill? No, that's not how it works. The on-chain token, at least from where the regulatory environment stands today, is that token is just like a dummy token. It's like a representation of the physical asset that is custodied off-chain, right, at a custodian, right, at a bank, at some kind of trust, at some kind of financial institution, right? And they have a register that says this treasury bill belongs to XYZ. And it's only when you redeem that token with the custodian, or usually through like the asset originator, asset issuer, that you actually become the owner of that asset. And so when you are trading an RWA on chain, you have no idea whether that token actually has any backing, right? Like you're just trading monopoly money. And so what you need is an oracle or some kind of mechanism, right, for reporting in real time, right, the reserves that are in custody, right, that are backing that particular RWA token. And no, you can't just trust the the asset originator, right? If Circle, for example, says, hey, we have all of these treasury bills in custody, right? You should not trust them. They have moral hazard, right? They are the ones that are incentivized to lie to you about how many reserves they have, right? It is absolutely critical that whoever is providing this information is a neutral third party that is getting their data directly from the custodian, right? They have direct access to the custodian account and can pull this data in real time and are not getting it through a middleman like the asset originator. Second is liquidity. Now, treasury bills are a terrible example of this because they're one of the most, or actually I think they are the most liquid asset in the world. But other RWAs are much more esoteric, and so liquidity becomes a huge problem, right? We're really used to having DeFi protocols work in this really smooth way, right? And when they liquidate, a bunch of loans, because BTC and ETH and staked ETH are incredibly liquid on chain. And so, how much are you going to lose when you try to sell an ETH? Not much, right? The market for, selling ETH is quite competitive. For other RWAs, that is not the case. Or even in some cases, right, where that liquidity is matters. If you're trying to liquidate a T-bill on chain, guess what? There is not a multi-trillion, dollar liquid market on chain for buying and selling of T-bills. There is off chain, but a DeFi protocol can't trigger a liquidation off chain. And then third is all kinds of metadata. And this is kind of like a catch-all category that's going to be highly dependent on, what is the specific asset that we're talking about, right? So in terms of T-bills or bonds, right, we could say, what is the yield of this bond? What is the term? When is it going to hit maturity, right? And in many cases, you're not talking about a single bond, right? You're talking about a portfolio of bonds, right? So if I say Silicon Valley Bank, does that ring any bells in the audience, right? So this was a bank in Silicon Valley that, wasn't, underwater. It had, more assets than it had liabilities. But the problem was that all of the assets, right, or the majority of the assets were concentrated in T-bills that were going to mature until very far into the future. And so they had a liquidity crisis, right, where when there was a bank run on Silicon Valley Bank, they could not handle, all of the withdrawals because they weren't going to have their T-bills reach maturity, and so they had to sell them at a discount before kind of the Fed stepped in to save them, right? And so, right, with RWAs, right, this composition of the distribution of maturity of a portfolio of bonds, right, is incredibly important for a DeFi protocol to know about the, product that it's integrating, right? Because it matters in terms of at what scale can it liquidate, right, and when. So, oh, lovely. The fonts look like they got all screwed up. Amazing. I want to walk you through a little bit of a case study. So recently we launched kind of the first RWA Oracle, and in conjunction with M0. And so talking about M0 for a second, what is M0? Well, they're a really interesting hybrid between, I would say they're between Circle, right, the USDC guys, and MakerDAO. Right, so, and I'll describe what I mean in a second. So, if you are Circle, you are a centralized issuer. As Circle, you can just print infinite USDCs, whether you have the backing or not, at least for a while before anyone else catches on. Right, just look at Tether; they did it for years. However, they have one real benefit, which is they have access to the collateral in the traditional financial system, right? They have access to this, huge swath of trillions of dollars of T-bills that they can use as collateral to help scale the USDC supply. On the opposite end, you have Maker, right? Maker is a decentralized issuer. Maker cannot just print infinite, DAI stablecoins. It can only, the protocol enforces the rule that only when someone, locks up some ETH or some BTC, right, can they create DAI against that, right? And so, yeah, that's much safer, but the problem that Maker has, right, is it can only use crypto collateral, right? It cannot use traditional finance collateral, which is, several orders of magnitude larger in scale. And so M0 tries to straddle kind of both of those and take the best of both worlds. So it is a decentralized protocol, right? So that enforces this characteristic, right? That you need to have collateral for the stablecoin to be issued, right? So you have this issuance kind of integrity safety. But the collateral they use is treasury bills that are locked up as custodians, right? So like Circle, they have access to this much, much larger supply of T-bill collateral. So how does it work? So a minter, so anyone who wants to create the stablecoin, right, will go and lock up some T-bills into storage at a custodian somewhere. In this case, I think it's a bank in Germany. The Chronicle RWA Oracle has direct access, read-only access to that account, and will in real time look at the securities account and cash account and be like, okay, these are the assets, securities, cash in that account that are mapped to this particular minter. And they will provide an attestation, right? Being like, okay, this is how much, deposits you have in that account. And that attestation can be used by the minter to mint stablecoins from the protocol. And now if you want to go in reverse, right, if you have some stablecoins and you want to get the underlying T-bills, you just burn the stablecoins on chain. The Chronicle Oracle will observe that burn event and attest, hey, you've burned this amount. You are eligible to claim the equivalent amount of T-bills from the custodian. And the minter will take that attestation to the custodian and then receive their now unencumbered, right, corresponding amount of T-bills or securities. So, right, just a quick recap, why does any of this matter, right? M0 lets you get access, right, to the greater, planes of traditional financial capital, right? And this is, right, the superpower that RWAs are going to give to DeFi. And I'm picking on M0 because they're just one of the first to really leverage this property. Two, right, there's not a centralized issuer here. It's still just a protocol that's issuing the stablecoin, so we can enforce, right, this code is law kind of property, right, which in crypto, right, is really important. And if we don't integrate RWAs in the right way, right, we stand to lose this property. And if we lose this property, then we failed. We've really failed because it is one of those superpowers that crypto gives us, and is what is going to enable us for DeFi to level up traditional finance rather than just falling prey to the same pitfalls that it has. And third is oracles, like Chronicle, are kind of critical in enabling this integration of RWAs in a manner that lets RWAs behave in a crypto-native manner. So I'm a big proponent of don't trust, verify. So you don't have to believe me when I'm sitting up here telling you all of this. Here's a direct Etherscan transaction. You can type in that hash into Etherscan right now. And essentially, this is a transaction that minted 710 M stablecoins. But let's dig into the guts a little bit, what happened here. So if we look into the data here, don't worry, you don't need to know any code. This is the collateral. So we see here that there's $31.9 million of collateral in the custody account. Here is the metadata hash. So this is encoding, right, who the minter is and what account they want to access and how many stablecoins they want to mint. This is the validator. So in this case, this is saying, hey, the attestation that is encoded in this signature, that was signed by the Chronicle Oracle. And here is the timestamp, right, for that attestation. So that's kind of how all that shebang works. Cool. So yep, I think that's it for me today. I want to thank you all for coming. If you want to learn more about Chronicle, you can follow us at Chronicle Labs on Twitter. We also have a really cool dashboard if you want to check it out. It's chroniclelabs.org/dashboard. And like you can play around with the Oracle a little bit. I think it's super cool. Also, we're hiring, right now we're hiring both developers as well as a new associate BD. So if you're interested in that, come talk to me. We are kind of based, globally. We allow you to work remote. We offer, not regional salaries, but like globally competitive salaries. And we just hire the best talent wherever we can find it. Thank you.